إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهدي الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أعاذنا الله وإياكم من النار. We begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, seeking His aid, seeking His assistance. Whom say about Allah as will guide, then can misguide. Whom say about Allah as will misguide, then can guide. I bear witness that none has right to be worshipped except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alone, without any partner, and I testify that Rasulullah alayhi salatu wasalam is his final prophet and messenger. Indeed, the best of speech is the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the best of guidance is the guidance of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam, and the worst of affairs are the newly introduced matters, and each and every single newly introduced matter is a bid'ah, it is an innovation, and each and every single innovation is a misguidance, and all of the misguidances are in the hellfire. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to protect myself and yourself from the hellfire. Ameen ya Rabb. Wallah alhamd, we continue our class in the science and topic of fiqh, and we are studying the book titled Manhajus Salikin wa Tawdih al-Fiqh fi Din, the path of the wayfarers and a clarification of fiqh in the religion. And the first question I have is, who is the author of this book? Mumtaz. Shaykh Abdul Rahman ibn Nasir as-Sa'di rahimahullah ta'ala, the great Hanbali faqih of this ummah, and he has authored many works, wallah alhamd, in fiqh. And we mentioned that this book which we are studying, it is a beginner risala, a beginner text in the science of fiqh, wallah alhamd. And last week we studied some chapters, one chapter, and that was the chapter of At-Tahara, Kitab At-Tahara. And we mentioned some rulings relating to water. So, first question, why do the ulama commence the books of fiqh with the chapter of Tahara? Because you have to be in a state of purification, in a state of Tahara, before you can execute certain ibadah, like salah and the like of it. So for this reason they commence with Kitabu At-Tahara. Thaniyan, the first discussion they bring up is Faslun fil Miyah, the discussion concerning types of water. Naam. And we mentioned that the author rahimahullah ta'ala mentions that there are two types of water. What are these two divisions? And what type of water can a Muslim perform wudu with? The Arabic term for it. Tahur. Is that the water must have the ability to purify. And he gives us a dabit, a criterion for water which purifies. And he said, it is any water which comes from the sky or is dug up from the earth. If the water remains in its natural state, then the water is considered to be tahur. Examples of this: rainwater. What else? Well water, river water. What about sea water? Sea water, Zakaria, correct? We can perform wudu with sea water because people will say, but it's salty, but that is the natural state of the water. And the Prophet ﷺ said, its water is tahur. Its water has the ability to purify. And the second classification of water, according to the mu'allif, the author, is najis. And this is any water which has been mixed with an impure substance which is considered to be impure in the Sharia. Na'am. However, he does make a distinction. And he says that if one of the attributes of the water changes, it is considered to be najis. And then he says, even with regards to water which is a little, if it is mixed with something which is tahir, something which is pure, what's the ruling on the water? It is pure as long as it doesn't overpower the water. We gave examples of this. If a person had a few granules of sugar, it fell into the water, the taste changed, but it didn't overpower the overall water. So that water will still be considered to be tahur, meaning you can perform wudu with it. طيب, the author then gave us a beneficial qaida, and that is al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shak. And certainty is not removed by doubt. An example of this: you perform wudu, and then you have doubt with regards to the whether you nullified your wudu. So what is the asl? He has wudu. Al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shak. And this is applied to, we said, the person himself, as well as the prayer place and his clothing. However, if you doubt whether you have purification and you're certain that you nullified your wudu, what is this person's state? He's in a state of hadath, right? He doesn't have wudu. So al-yaqinu la yazulu bi-shak, and that's based upon the hadith where the Prophet said to the person who yukhayyalu, he imagined that he passed away in the salah. What did the Prophet tell him? La yansarif hatta yasma'a sawtan aw yajida rihan. Don't exit your prayer up until you hear that you pass wind or you find the smell. Taib. And that is some segments on the first chapter, which is the chapter of At-Tahara. We also discussed the chapter concerning Al-Aniyah, and this is the chapter concerning utensils. What is the hadith that the author brings in this bab, in this chapter? Afwan? No? Okay, it can't be made of pure gold. So we said the hadith reads, do not eat out of gold and silver utensils, do not drink out of gold and silver utensils, and don't eat out of its plates. For it is for them in the dunya and it is for us in the akhirah. So it is haram al-Muslim to eat out of gold and silver utensils. And then we clarified the rulings with regards to males and females, the usage of gold, and the various rulings. Taib, today inshallah, on this evening we move on to the next chapter. And the next chapter is Babul Istinja wa Adabi Qada'il Hajah. The chapter concerning istinja and the etiquettes of relieving oneself. So why do the ulama follow this sequence? They discuss water, then they discuss the usage of utensils, and then they discuss istinja. Because all of these chapters, it is a prerequisite for salah and for wudu. Meaning that if the person has a need to istinja, he must do istinja before he can perform wudu. Before he can perform wudu. Na'am. And they also mention to us the etiquettes of using the bathroom. So the author rahimahullah says, يستحب إذا دخل الخلاء أن يقدم رجله اليسرى ويقول بسم الله اللهم إني أعوذ بك من الخبث والخبائث. He says rahimahullah ta'ala, it is recommended that when one enters the khala, and the khala is referred to as the toilet and the place which is used to relieve oneself, and in the past they used to call it the lavatory, that he yuqaddim rijla al-yusra, that he enters using his left foot, wa yaqulu bismillah, and he says bismillah, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal-khaba'ith, and he makes the recommended dua. He then says وَإِذَا خَرَجَ مِنْهُ قَدَّمَ الْيُمْنَى وَقَالَ غُفْرَانَكَ, and when he exits the bathroom, he exits using his right foot and he says غُفْرَانَكَ الْحَمْدُ لِلَّهِ الَّذِي أَذْهَبَ عَنِي الْعَذَى وَعَفَانِي. He then mentions رحمه الله وَيَعْتَمِدُ فِي جُلُوسِي عَلَى رِجْلِ الْيُسْرَى, and that when he relieves himself, he places most of his body weight on his left side. So this is really showing us the etiquette of relieving ourselves, is that when we relieve ourselves, we must sit down. وَيَنْصِبُ الْيُمْنَى, and he arches his right foot. وَيَسْتَتِرُ بِحَائِطٍ أَوْ غَيْرِهِ وَيَبْعُدُ إِنْ كَانَ فِي الْفَضَاءِ, and he conceals himself by a hole or other than it, meaning whatever is used to conceal oneself when relieving oneself. وَيَبْعُدُ إِنْ كَانَ فِي الْفَضَاءِ. And if he is in an open area, he distances himself. We're going to discuss all of these matters, inshallah. And he says, وَلَا يَحِلُ لَهُ أَن يَقْضِيَ حَاجَتَهُ فِي طَرِيقٍ. And it is not permissible for him to relieve himself فِي طَرِيقٍ. Now, فِي طَرِيقٍ. And فِي طَرِيقٍ refers to a road. نعم. أو محل جلوس الناس. Or in a place where people sit, and a place where people frequent, like a public park, for example. أو تحت الأشجار المثمرة. Or that he relieves himself under a tree which produces fruit. أو في محل يؤذي به الناس. Or in any place where people will be harmed by his urine. ولا يستقبل القبلة أو يستدبرها حال قضاء الحاجة. And he does not face the Qibla or turns his back to it whilst he relieves himself. Based upon the hadith, which is agreed upon its authenticity, when the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا أَتَيْتُمُ الْغَائِطَ فَلَا تَسْتَقْبِلُوا الْقِبْلَةَ بِغَائِطٍ وَلَا بَوْلٍ وَلَا تَسْتَدْبِرُوهَا وَلَكِنْ شَرِّكُوا أَوْ غَرِّبُوا. The Prophet said that when you relieve yourself, then do not face the Qibla, whether it be for relieving yourself from excrement or if you urinate. وَلَا تَسْتَدْبِرُوهَا. Nor turn your back to the Qibla. وَلَكِنْ شَرِّكُوا أَوْ غَرِّبُوا. Rather face the east or face the west. And the author then says, فَإِذَا قَضَى حَاجَتَهُ اسْتَجْمَرَ بِثَلَاثَةِ أَحْجَارٍ وَنَحْوِهَا. And when he concludes relieving himself, he does istijmar. And istijmar is literally using stones. Naam. And he says, 3 stones, وَنَحْوِهَا, or whatever takes its place. In our times, tissue paper. تُنَقِّي الْمَحَلِ. And this must clean the area. ثُمَّ اسْتَنْجَى بِالْمَاءِ. And thereafter, he does istinja with water. وَيَكْفِي الْإِقْتِصَارُ عَلَى أَحَدِهِمَا. And it is sufficient to only use one, meaning either istijmar or istinja. We'll discuss all of these masail, inshallah. And he says, وَلَا يَسْتَجْمِرْ بِالرَّوْثِ الْعِظَامِ كَمَا نَهَى عَنْهُ النَّبِيُّ صلى الله عليه وسلم وَكَذَلِكَ كُلُّ مَا لَهُ حُرْمَةٌ. And he does not do istinja with rawth. And rawth is the droppings of animals. وَالْعِظَامِ. No bones. As the Prophet also prohibited this. وَكَذَلِكَ كُلُّ مَا لَهُ حُرْمَةٌ. Likewise, everything which is considered to be sacred. So this is chapter we'll be discussing this evening, inshallah. It is Babul Istinja. Na'am, Babul Istinja. And the meaning of Istinja is removing whatever comes out of the 2 passageways by using water. This is what the ulama refer to as Istinja. Istinja is the use of water to clean oneself, to clean his private parts. As for istijmar, istijmar refers to removal what comes out of the 2 passages by using stones, leaves, or whatever is like it. Na'am. And of course, time of the Sahaba and the Prophets also, they never used to have tissue paper, but rather they used to have stones. So they made use of stones. And this is the concept of istijmar. So what is istinja? Using water. Istijmar, use of stones or whatever takes its ruling, because there are conditions for the object that you use to clean yourself with. Okay, we'll get to that. So the ulama refer to this chapter with many definitions and terminologies. Firstly, al-istitaba. And al-istitaba means the general concept of seeking cleanliness after relieving oneself. Istitaba. Because after the person purifies himself, he feels clean. He feels pure. And this is istitaba. They also refer to it as istinja, as the author referred to it. Al-istinja specifically refers to the use of water. They also use the term al-istibra. Al-istibra. And al-istibra means to make sure that no impurities remain on the body after urinating. This is the concept of istibra. And they also use the term adabu takhalli, which means the etiquettes of relieving oneself. And from this we can see Islam is the religion which is shamil and kamil. It is all encompassing and it is complete, because the deen of Allah Azza wa Jal even taught us how to clean ourselves. And this is something which the Jews mocked the Muslims for. Salman al-Farsi narrates that they said, "Allamakum nabiyukum kulla shay," that your Prophet ﷺ teaches you everything. And he said, "Na'am." He taught us to, when we relieve ourselves, to clean ourselves with 3 stones or more. So the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has clarified each and every single matter to us. And the question we always ask is that if the Prophet ﷺ clarified to us matters which pertain to personal hygiene, like istinja, then what about the greater matters? And what are the greater matters? The matters of aqeedah, the matters of tawheed, the matters which draw us closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those things which distance us from Allah Azza wa Jal. If the Prophet ﷺ taught us istinja, it's not foremost that he taught us these major fundamental matters, matters which pertain to our aqeedah and our tawheed. And what is the answer? Certainly, definitely. The Prophet ﷺ left no stone unturned, and he conveyed that which was given to him as an amana. So adabu takhalli refers to the etiquettes or manners of relieving oneself, which include specific guidelines, like the author mentioned, that when we do istinja, we use 3 stones. When we do istinja, or when we relieve ourselves, we don't face the qibla and we don't turn our backs to it. When we enter the bathroom, we enter with our left foot and we say the recommended dua. And when we leave with our right foot and we say the recommended dua. So this refers to as adabu takhalli. So the ulama never mentioned the chapter concerning cleaning yourself from urine and excrement. And why is this? Is because this is the way of the Arabs. That the Arabs used to use kinaya, they used to use words in place of things which is considered to be filthy. And things which they would protect their eyes and their ears from, they never used to use it in their language. If somebody urinates, no one likes to see that sight, sah? If somebody excretes, that's a detested sight. So they never used to refer to it as the chapter of urination and defecation, but rather they said the chapter concerning qada al-haja. Basically, the chapter of relieving oneself, the etiquettes of relieving oneself. And in this is a fa'idatun tarbawiyah, and that is that we must protect our tongues from anything which is obscene. And sometimes we use this. When we say we need to relieve ourselves, we say I need to take a. You with me? So it teaches us a tarbiyah, that even things which we don't like to see, we shouldn't use that type of terminologies in our speech. Naam. So the author rahimahullah said, Adabi qada al-haja, the etiquettes of relieving oneself. And this means that the etiquettes which one adopts when he uses the bathroom. Since the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions these mannerisms, and he ﷺ is our example. Allah Azza said, لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهَ وَالْيَوْمَ الْآخِرِ وَذَكَرَ اللَّهُ كَثِيرًا. That certainly in the Messenger ﷺ, do you have a uswatun hasana? You have an exemplary example. But who finds an example in the Messenger of Allah ﷺ? Allah says, لِمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو اللَّهِ, for the one who yearns to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَذَكَرَ اللَّهَ كَثِيرًا, and the one who remembers Allah Azza wa Jal much. This is the Muslim who will find an example in the life of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So even with relation to certain matters of relieving ourselves, we make ta'assi bin Nabi, meaning we follow the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's recommended actions with regards to relieving ourselves. Na'am. So the first etiquette the author mentions, yustahabbu idha dakhala al-khala, that it is recommended when the person enters the bathroom that he enters with his left foot. And there's no explicit text which relate to this. But some scholars have mentioned that this is known by qiyas. And that's why we said in the Sharia there is different levels of proofs. Firstly, the asl, the main source of law, the Quran, thumma sunnah, thumma ijma', consensus, thumma qiyas, analogy. So analogy is basically basing a ruling on something, on an existing ruling, when there is no specific ruling for that particular matter. Mathalan, the example of khamr. Taib. Did Allah Azza wa Jal mention in His book all types of intoxicants? Or did Allah Azza wa Jal specifically prohibit khamr? He specifically prohibited khamr, which is wine. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Kullu muskirin haramun. Anything which intoxicates is haram. So now, based upon this ruling, we do analogy on all types of substances which people use as drugs. And we come to the conclusion that it is the same like khamr, so it is haram. So this is qiyas. There's no explicit text, so the ulama look at other existing rulings and they base the current ruling on that ruling. If the ruling shares in illah, meaning if the ruling shares in the same reasoning. Fahmt? So to enter the bathroom with one's left foot. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith found in Abu Dawud, إِذَا انْتَعَلَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَبْدَ بِالْيَمِينِ وَإِذَا نَزَعَ فَلْيَبْدَ بِالشِّمَالِ وَلْتَكُنُ الْيَمِينُ أَوَّلُهُمَا يُنْتَعَلُ وَآخِرُهُمَا يُنْزَعُ. The Prophet said that when one of you puts on his shoes, he should put on his right shoe first. And when he takes him off, he should begin with his left foot. And he should take off the left one first so that the right foot should be the first to put in and the last to be taken out. And there's another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, which is narrated by Sayyidina Aisha, wherein she said that the Prophet ﷺ was amazed bit tayammun. That the Prophet ﷺ was amazed by using the right side. في ترجله وفي تنعله وفي شأنه كله أو كما قال. That she said the Prophet ﷺ used to love using the right side with regard to tarajjulihi, with regards to combing his hair, with regards to tana'ulihi, with regards to wearing his shoes, wa fi sha'nihi kulli, and with regards to all of his affairs. Any matter wherein we have two body parts, the Prophet always preferred the right side first. And the ulama mentioned this is with regards to matters which is mukarram, matters which is considered to be something which is noble. The Prophet ﷺ began with the right side. So based upon these evidences, the scholars have mentioned that when we enter the bathroom, we will enter the bathroom with the left foot. And here the scholars have a qaida, they say taqdeemul yumna lit-takreem wal yusra li khilafihi. That using the right side is with regards to matters which is considered to be noble, and using the left for that which is opposite to it. So entering the bathroom, is it something which is considered to be noble? Is it something which is considered to be a good thing? And what's your opinion? Hey? It's a place you go to relieve yourself. And it's a place you go to rid yourself of any excess in your body. So not something considered to be noble. And that's why it is called Dawul Haja. It is relieving oneself from a need. Relieving oneself from a need. So it is recommended to enter with the right foot. And the author says that it is also recommended, mustahab, that when he enters the bathroom, to say. What must he say? Bismillah. So what if a Muslim adds Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim? Wa a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Jaiz? Not legislated. Because the Prophet ﷺ also only said, say Bismillah. Also, what is meant by saying Bismillah when you enter? Is it before or whilst you enter? Before you enter. Na'am. So when you are entering the bathroom, before you enter, you will say Bismillah and then you will enter the bathroom. Because it is haram to remember Allah Azza wa Jal in the bathroom. طيب. The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith found in Tirmidhi, Satru ma bayna a'yunil jinn wa awrati bani Adam idha dakhala ahaduhum al-khala ay yakula bismillah. The Prophet ﷺ said that the covering between the eyes of jinn and the awrat, meaning the private parts of the sons of Adam, is that when he enters the bathroom, he says Bismillah. So this is one reasoning why we say Bismillah. That the bathroom is a place where the jinn reside. And they are always present. And so when we enter the bathroom and we say Bismillah, Allah Azza wa Jalla places a barrier between us and the eyes of the jinn. So we protect our private parts even in this circumstance. Taib, this is another recommended sunnah, that the person says Bismillah when entering. And then when he enters also, who knows the dua which is warid? We mentioned it at the beginning. The recommended dua. Allahumma inni a'udhu bika minal khubuthi wal khaba'ith. Right? Khubuthi wal khaba'ith. So with regards to this narration, khubuth has a meaning and khubuth has a meaning. So there's two ways the narration has been relayed. Firstly, khubthu min al khubthi with a sukoon on the ba, and khubuth on the ba there is a dhamma, khubuth. Na'am. So what is the difference between the two? Al khubthu with a sukoon is a shar. So when you say, oh Allah, I seek your protection from evil. Wal khaba'ith is the plural of shar. So I seek protection with you, Allah Azza wa Jal, from all types of evil. So this is when you say khubth, right, with a sukoon. The other narration mentions khubuth. Khubuth with a dhamma on the ba. And khubuth, when we say it in this manner, it refers to dhukurul jinn, the males of the jinn. And when we say khaba'ith, it refers to female jinn. So Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubthi wal-khaba'ith. Khubth with a sukoon means shar, evil. And that is general, all types of evil, jinn, whatever else. And when we say Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi with a dhamma on the ba, then it relates to male jinn and female jinn type. So this is the recommended dua. And when he leaves the bathroom, the author says, وَإِذَا خَرَجَ مِنْهُ قَدَّمَ الْيُمْنَى. And when he leaves the bathroom with his right foot. Type. And he says the recommended dua, which is غُفْرَانَكَ. And what does غُفْرَانَكَ mean? It means, oh Allah, I seek forgiveness from you. Oh Allah, I seek forgiveness from you. So firstly, why would the Prophet ﷺ seek forgiveness before exiting the bathroom. Who knows? We follow it, inshallah. But why? For anything which may have occurred inside. Then what are we doing in the bathroom? Just relieve yourself. Khalas, bas. Taib. The Prophet sought the refuge from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, forgiveness from Allah azza wa jal, for the reason being that when he entered the bathroom, the Prophet ﷺ never ever remembered Allah azza wa jal. As the hadith says, كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يذكر الله على كل أحيانه, found in Muslim. That the Prophet ﷺ used to remember Allah azza wa jal in all circumstances, with the recommended adhkar that the Prophet ﷺ taught us. So the Prophet ﷺ was from amongst those who remembered Allah azza wa jal in all circumstances. Taib, that means all circumstances. And we always give this advice, is that if you learn all the recommended du'as of the Prophet ﷺ for the various aspects of our day, then you become from amongst those who remember Allah azza wa jal often and much. The morning and the evening adhkar. حسبي الله لا إله إلا عليه توكلت وهو رب العرش العظيم. 7 times. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من شر ما خلق. بسم الله الذي لا يضر مع اسمه شيء في الأرض ولا في السماء وهو السميع العليم. And when you wake up in the morning, الحمد لله الذي أحيانا بعدما أماتنا وإليه النشور. When you go to bed at night, اللهم باسمك أموت وأحيا. When you enter the bathroom, as we mentioned. When you leave the bathroom, as we mentioned. Before you have your breakfast, Bismillah. After you eat, what does the dua for after we eat? Alhamdulillahi alladhi at'amani hadha wa razaqani min ghayri hawlin minni wa la quwwa. Then you leave for work, inshallah, in the morning. And you say, Bismillah, tawakkaltu ala Allahi wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Ila akhiri dhalik. And the Prophet ﷺ used to seek forgiveness from Allah azza wa jal and turn to him in repentance fil yawmi mi'ata marra, 100 times. And the Sahaba said, we counted in a single majlis that the Prophet ﷺ used to do istighfar 100 times. And this is how the Prophet ﷺ remembered Allah azza wa jal, with the prescribed adhkar. But when he entered the bathroom, ﷺ, he never remembered Allah tabaraka wa ta'ala. So for this reason, the Prophet ﷺ said Ghufranaka. Firstly, for the reason being that he did not remember Allah azza wa jal whilst he was in the bathroom. The second reason is because Allah azza wa jal has given you the ability to relieve yourself. And as it is said, ni'matun idha fuqidat urifat. A bounty, when it is lost, the true reality of that bounty becomes known. So for us, we simply go to the bathroom, we relieve ourselves, walillahi alhamd. We don't give it much thought. But for a person who has a weak bladder, and he has a build-up in his bladder, and he can't relieve himself, a male, he must go to hospital to relieve himself. Understand? A person who perhaps has been afflicted with some form of cancer, colon cancer and the like. Sometimes they cut away from the colon, and then they place a stoma bag here, and the person defecates through that. So a bounty, when it is lost, the true reality of that bounty becomes known. So the Prophet also said, Ghufranaka. Why? Because Allah azza wa jal made it easy for you to consume this food. And Allah azza wa jal made it easy upon you for your body to digest this food. And Allah azza wa jal made it easy for you, for your body to absorb whatever nutrients it needed and to expel whatever was excess. Naam? And then to relieve yourself. So for this reason the Prophet said, Ghufranaka. Taib? So the person then says when he leaves the bathroom, what does he say? Alhamdulillahi alladhi adhaba anil adha wa afani. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who rid me of adha, of harm, wa afani, and has granted me afiyah. Because had Allah Azza wa Jal decreed that this, that this filth remained in your body, we'd possibly die. You with me? So Allah Azza wa Jal made it easy for us to relieve ourselves in a natural manner. So the Prophet said, Alhamdulillahi alladhi azhaba anil adha wa afani. All praise belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the one who has rid me of harm, adha, wa afani, and has granted me afiyah. And the one who is in a state of afiyah truly recognizes afiyah when that bounty is taken away from him. So something we mentioned that we don't give much thought to is relieving ourselves. That in and of itself is a blessing of Allah Azza wa Jal, which many of us is unmindful of. The author rahimahullah said, وَيَعْتَمِدُ فِي جُلُوسِي عَلَى رِجْلِ الْيُسْرَى وَيَنْصِبُ الْيُمْنَى. That when you relieve yourself, you must rely mostly on your left side, وَيَنْصِبْ الْيُمْنَى, and you must arch your right foot. So I would like to display for the brothers. This is of course in the case now when you're squatting. Now, was it display for us? Must I do the display? Type. Those online can't see this, but what the Prophet is saying is, يَعْتَمِدُ فِي جُلُوسِهِ عَلَى رِجْلِهِ الْيُسْرَى وَيَنْصِبْ. It's difficult if you're not used to it. وَيَنْصِبْ al-yumna, to arch the foot. And this is actually the most natural way to relieve yourself. And even the doctors today said this is the most natural way. If you relieve yourself like this, you're not going to sit for hours in the bathroom. The method of the bathroom which we use is actually unnatural. Right? Why? Because you're actually compressing your intestines. So like this, free flow, right? Khalas, right? And some scholars say that this is it is sunnah to sit like that. It is sunnah to sit like that. So this is based upon the hadith of Suraqa ibn Malik found in at-Tabarani. However, there is some kalam on the hadith. Some scholars say the hadith is not authentic. However, Imam Nawawi said that this seems to be the most natural position to relieve yourself. And also the doctors today have said that this is the best way to relieve yourself. Naam, the best way to relieve yourself. The next etiquette the author mentions, or before we get to the next etiquette, the author did not mention this in his book. But what is the ruling on standing and urinating? What is the ruling on standing and urinating? Naam? Permissible but not recommended. It can be permissible. When? Naam. Type. So, the scholars have two opinions with regard to this mas'ala. Type. And the first is that it is la yajuz. It is not permissible to stand and urinate. Why? Because one of the recommendations of urinating yourself is that in some of the books of fiqh they say wartada mawdi and rikhwan. You must choose to urinate at a place where whatever you urinate on absorbs the urination. And this is known by tajruba. Perhaps when you were younger and you had a need and you stood and you urinated, and for example concrete floor, what happens? Yatataya, right? Basically the splatters. So some scholars say it is la yajuz. Why? Because the hadith when Sayyidina Aisha radhiallahu anha said, Man haddathakum anna Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam bala qa'iman fala tusaddiquh. Whoever narrates to you that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam stood and urinated, fala tusaddiquh, then don't believe him. And she said, Ma kana yabulu illa jalisan. Reported in Tirmidhi. That the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam never ever stood and urinated. Taib. And other scholars have said that it is permitted. Because there's another hadith where it mentions explicitly, Fabala qa'iman, that the Prophet ﷺ stood and urinated. So how do we reconcile between this? Because she said, whomsoever said the Prophet ﷺ stood and urinated, then don't believe him. So we need to reconcile between this. That of course she knew best the intimate affairs of the Prophet ﷺ. So this is what occurred in the house. It doesn't rule out the possibility that the Prophet ﷺ could stand and urinate. However, the scholars do say with the shart, or the condition, is that the urine does not splatter back on a person. And this perhaps is the correct opinion, because at times you find yourself in a public area, Allah musta'an, because the kuffar don't know bathroom etiquette. And it even extends to the Muslims at times, that you come to a mall, you need to urinate, but you find there's urination all over the place. There's urine all over the place. So what are you going to do in this instance? You have to stand and urinate. Naam. But you need to protect yourself from the splashes of urine. And Allah musta'an, we said sometimes this even extends to the Muslims as well. And that's why this chapter of knowledge is important to learn. Everybody thinks they know istinja, right? And we do. But wallah, you go to masajid, and just to damn in a masjid, and you go and there's urine all over the toilet seat. Allah musta'an. Do the people not know toilet etiquette? So am I going to sit on that seat? Perhaps if I clean it, but if it's not possible, there's no other bathrooms, what you're going to do? So with the condition that the urine doesn't splatter on the person, then it is permitted based upon the hadith. Based upon the hadith. And the reason why we say it is not permitted to stand if this condition is not met is because the hadith we always quote, that the Prophet ﷺ passed by two graves. Marra, yani biqabarain. فقال إنهما لا يعذبان وما يعذبان أو يعذبان في كبير. The Prophet said that these two individuals are being punished. And side note, that whenever the Prophet ﷺ mentions something of the unseen, it is restricted to that particular instance. So some people will go with this hadith and say the Prophet had absolute knowledge of the unseen. But this is not the case. It only relates to that particular instance. And he said they're not being punished with regards to a major sin. أما أحدهما فكان لا يستترون من البول. He never used to protect himself from urine. So the urine goes on your body, the person performs wudu, there's no wudu for him. The person urinates, the urine goes on his clothing, he performs wudu, there's no salah for him. Why? Because his body is not clean and his clothing is not clean. Fine? Important masala. So the author said that he must conceal himself from the gaze of people with a covering or other than it. Because the Prophet ﷺ said, Man atal gha'ita falyastatir. That whomsoever relieves himself, he must conceal himself. And today this is an etiquette which is forgotten by the people generally. You pass down Lansdowne Main Road, you find people urinating outside the houses. Allah musta'an. And this is a sabab for la'an. This is the reason why they become cursed. And we'll mention the hadith later. Type. So people don't have this modesty. They relieve themselves anyway, and they don't conceal themselves. So the etiquette is that whenever goes to the bathroom, they should conceal themselves, because the Prophet ﷺ said this. And it's either in the toilet, and this is the case for us, or if the person is in an open area, he must conceal himself by a tree, a rock, or a bathroom. And the hadith mentions, وَكَانَ أَحَبَّ مَا اسْتَتَرَ بِهِ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم لِحَاجَتِهِ هَدْفٌ أَوْ خَائِشُ نَخْلٍ. That the Prophet also used to like concealing himself, using, when he had a need, he used to use a lofty place or a cluster of dates, meaning he used to cover himself by date palm. As Asma mentioned, it implied an enclosure of the date trees, which is found in Sahih Muslim. So, two things is recommended that we need to relieve ourselves. Firstly, istitar. And istitar is concealing oneself. Naam. Number two, ibti'ad. Is that if you're in an open area, you must walk off. Right? Walk off up until people can't see you. And this was the etiquette of the Prophet and the Sahaba when they used to relieve themselves. That if one is in an open area, to distance oneself from the gaze of people, because this is the goal. The author says, وَيَبْعُدُ إِنْ كَانَ فِي الْفَضَاءِ, that he must distance himself from the people if he is in an open area. Na'am? Because this was the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ. The hadith mentioned, which is found in Bukhari and Muslim, فَانْتَلَقَ حَتَّى تَوَارَ عَنِّي فَقَضَى حَاجَتَهُ. That the narrator mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ disappeared from me and then he relieved himself. So what is recommended? Firstly, istitar. What does this mean? Concealing yourself, concealing your private parts. That no one must see your private parts. Number 2, ibti'ad. Ibti'ad means going far off to relieve ourselves. Taib. The author then mentioned, rahimahullah ta'ala, وَلَا يَجُوزُ وَلَا يَحِلُّ لَهُ أَن يَقْضِيَ حَاجَتَهُ فِيهِ. And it's not permitted for a Muslim to relieve himself in the following places. Firstly, tariqin, on a road which is used by the people. Number 2, أو محل جلوس الناس, or a place where people frequent and they sit, like a public park or a public space. ثالثا, number 3, أو تحت الأشجار المثمرة, or he leaves himself under a tree which bears fruit. أو في محل يؤذي به الناس. طيب. And this is based upon the hadith where the Prophet also mentioned to us that there are 2 people who invoke the curse of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon them, which is found in Muslim. The hadith of Abu Hurairah when he said, ittaku la'annayni. Ittaku la'annayni. وَمَا اللَّعَنَّانِ يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. And then was said that who are the la'annan, who are the 2 cursed individuals? The Prophet said, الَّذِي يَتَخَلَّى فِي طَرِيقِ النَّاسِ أَوْ فِي ظِلِّهِمْ. The one who relieved himself, yani on the pathways of people or in the areas where they seek shade. That this is a reason for la'an. And some scholars say it is from 2 angles. First, it could mean that this action is cursed by Allah Azza wa Jalla and His Messenger. That if you pee or you urinate or you defecate in a public area, then Allah and His Messenger curses this individual. Allah musta'an. Secondly, some scholars say that it could also mean fear the 2 cursed individuals. And why are these individuals cursed? Because if a person seeks shade under a tree, and it's a public area, and he sits down, and then he discovers this pee, what does he say? And it's a sabab for la'an. He says, may the curse of Allah be upon this person. Now, so the person becomes cursed due to this action. So for this reason, it is prohibited to urinate in public spaces. And today we can say, hadith wala haraj. Speak and there's no end. We see this every day. Na'am? People don't know basic etiquette and basic modesty because they are distant from Allah and His Messenger and Islam, and they relieve themselves anyway. Public roads, people's walking on the roads, they don't worry. Na'am? So this is haram. Number 2, places where people seek shade. Places where people seek shade. Yani even, for example, on the beach. To urinate on the beach is haram because it's a place where people frequent. Number 3, under trees which bear fruit or people seek shade. And the ulama mentioned that one angle why this is prohibited as well is because yani when the fruit falls and it falls in the urine, yani it is a reason for itlaful mal, meaning it is wasting people's money and it is bringing destruction to people's wealth because it's fasid now. It mixed with najis. So if the person had a farm and you pee under a tree, yani it affects his produce. So for this reason it's haram. And any place wherein people would be harmed by the najis. Any place where people will be harmed by the najis, it is haram to yani relieve oneself there. The author then says, rahimahullah ta'ala, وَلَا يَسْتَقْبِلُ الْكِبْلَةَ أَوْ يَسْتَدْبِرُهَا حَالَ قَضَاءِ الْحَاجَةِ. that when one relieves himself, he does not face the Qibla, nor does he turn his back to it. And in my social experiment, most of the houses, mashallah, is not in the direction of the Qibla, right? So, the Prophet said, sallallahu إِذَا أَتَيْتُمُ الْغَائِطِ فَلَا تَسْتَقْبِلُوا الْقِبْلَةَ وَلَا تَسْتَدْبِرُوهَا. That when you relieve yourself, do not face the Qibla, whether you whether you relieve yourself from number 2 or urine, وَلَا تَسْتَدْبِرُوهَا, no face your backs to it, وَلَكِنْ شَرِّكُوا أَوْ غَرِّبُوا, but rather شَرِّكُوا, face the east or the west. Now face the east or the west. So this hadith is in relation to who the Prophet is also addressing here. Ahlul Madinah, the people of Medina, because their Qibla was in the Janub. What is the Janub? The south. With me? The south would be the Qibla. So for this reason, the Prophet told them not to face that direction. As for us, for which direction is Qibla for us? North, northeast. Right? North, northeast. You ask the question to someone, which way is Qibla? They say, Netsu, Skyns. Huh? Everywhere we go in Cape Town, mashallah, Netsu, Skyns, right? So we actually face north, northeast. That is our Qibla direction. For the people of Medina, it was in the south. So for us, we don't face the north, and we shouldn't face the west, right? But for the people of Medina, Sharriku or Gharribu. So the ulama have 3 opinions regarding this matter. What is the issue that we're discussing? The issue of facing the direction of the Qibla when you relieve yourself, or turning your back to it. Firstly, it is not permitted to face the Qibla or turn one's back to it, whether it is in a building or open area. So whether it's a building or open area, some scholars say it is mutlaq, it is absolute. You cannot face it and you cannot turn your back to it. And the basis upon the hadith in Sahih Muslim, which we mentioned, which the author also mentioned. The second opinion is it is permitted to face the Qibla and turn your back towards it, based on the hadith of Umar. That he said, Raqitu ala bayti ukhti Hafsa. He said, I climbed on the roof of my sister's home, Hafsa. And then he says, فَرَأَيْتُ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ قَاعِدًا لِحَاجَتِهِ مُسْتَقْبِلَ شَامٍ مُسْتَدْبِرَ الْقِبْلَةِ. And he said, I then saw the Prophet ﷺ, قَاعِدًا, standing, relieving himself, and he was facing Sham, and his back was turned towards the Qibla. And the hadith is in Sahih Muslim. Taib. And the third opinion, it is permitted to turn one's back to the Qibla, but not permissible to face it in a building, based upon the hadith of Ibn Umar. So how do the scholars reconcile between this? Because here the Prophet ﷺ, was relieving himself, and he was facing Baytul Maqdis, right? Sham, and his back was towards the Qibla. But the Prophet said, do not face the Qibla, do not turn your back to it. So is it possible that the Prophet ﷺ could have done a makruh act? And the scholars say, La. The Prophet ﷺ, ma fa'ala makruh al-batta. He never ever did a makruh act. Alayhi salatu wassalam. So some scholars say the hadith is abrogated. The hadith, when the Prophet faced his back towards the Qibla, it's abrogated. Na'am. Other scholars have reconciled between it. And they say that the ruling of facing the Qibla or turning your back to it, it is not haram, but it is makruh. It is makruh. But perhaps if we take the opinion that is abrogated, that's the safer view. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Taib. The author then said, rahimahullah ta'ala, and this is the final part we'll be dealing with this evening. He says, فَإِذَا قَضَى حَاجَتَهُ اسْتَجْمَرَ بِثَلَاثَةِ أَحْجَارٍ وَنَحْوِهَا تُنَقِّيَ الْمَحَلَّ ثُمَّ اسْتَنْجَى بِالْمَاءِ. That when one completes relieving himself, istajmara bi thalathati ahjarin, that he uses 3 stones or the like of it, to naqi al-mahal, if yani it purifies and cleans the area. Na'am. ثم استنجى بالماء, and then he does istinja with water. ويكفي الاقتصار على أحدهما, and it is sufficient to only use one. So we know yani, in our tradition and culture, we don't like the concept of dry wipe, right? Dry wipe. But what is the ruling on simply using yani tissue paper to clean oneself with no water? It's permitted. That's what the author is saying, right? And that's the concept of istijmar, right? So what is istijmar? Using stones or anything which fulfills the conditions of stones. Naam. So the condition of istijmar is as follows. Number 1, that you must use something which is pure. You cannot use something which is considered to be impure. Like the bone of an animal that was not slaughtered is considered to be impure. And it's also something which is considered to be sacred. And there's explicit prohibition with regards to the use of bones and rawth, which is dung. So you must use something which is pure, right? So if you use yani, tissue paper, suffice. Use the baby wipe, suffice, right? It must be pure in and of itself. That's the first condition. The second condition is it must have the ability to clean. If it doesn't have the ability to clean, you can't use it for istijmar. And this cause, to give you an example. Firstly, rawth, the droppings of animals. Okay, it doesn't have the ability to clean. Might not be considered to be najis, as we'll get to that chapter inshallah. But it doesn't have the ability to clean you. They also say zujaj. And if you use like a piece of, like use a glass, 500 ml bottle, you wipe yourself. Fahim? Doesn't have the ability to clean. So that will not fulfill the conditions of istijmar. Number 3, that one wipes at least thrice. To naqi al-mahal. That the person wipes at least thrice. Right? Because the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, he said, أن نستنجى بأقل من 3 أحجار أو أن نستنجى برجيء أو بعظم. That when you do istijmar, you must use at least 3 stones. طيب. So 3 pieces of tissue paper, you wipe. What if you require more wiping? Huh? Use more. You use more. And of course, you stop on an odd number. So if on the 4th wipe you cleaned, right, you use 5 wipes at least. Fahimta? Because the Prophet gave us this instruction that we end upon an odd number. So this is the issue concerning istijmar. And regarding this, yani, we mentioned that if it purifies the spot, then it is sufficient. However, if you wipe and it spreads, if it wipe and it spreads from the original place, right, the anus, it smudges, then you must use water. Fahimt? Because it went yani past the mawdi al-ada. It went past the place which is considered to be the norm. So in this event, you must use water. So is it possible that you can wipe and you be clean? Huh? Social experiment. Is it possible? Depends what you eat. Sometimes your stool is not very wet, it's dry, and you wipe, it will be clean. Sah? Na'am. However, we said if it spreads, then it becomes fard to use water. Na'am, it becomes fard to use water. And with regard to this, Imam Ahmad rahimahullah said, Al-jam'u baynahuma ahabbu ilayya. He said that gathering between istijmar and water, it is more beloved to me. Right? It is more beloved to me to do this because it is athar. And if you were to restrict yourself to one of it, some scholars say then it's best to use water because water definitely cleans the area, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. The author then said, then he uses water. And this is the more complete form of at-tahara. And with regards to this, Allah Azza wa Jal revealed a verse. Allah Azza wa Jal said, فيه رجال يحبون أن يتطهروا والله يحب المطهرين. That in it there are men who love to purify themselves. And Allah Azza wa Jal loves those whom keep themselves pure and purify themselves. And so Abu Hurairah said that this ayah was revealed. Abu Hurairah said that the Prophet said that this ayah was revealed about the people of Quba. In it are men who love to purify themselves, and Allah loves those who purify themselves. He said they used to use water to perform istinja, so this verse was revealed with regards to them. This verse was revealed with regards to them. So, al-jamu baynahuma afdal, because you know the spot is definitely clean. It is definitely clean. And it suffices to use one of them. It is not necessary to use both water and istijmar. Using one is sufficient and water is best. Also, the Prophet also mentioned he forbade us from doing istijmar with the rawth and bones. The author said, وَلَا يَسْتَجْمِرْ بِالرَّوْثِ وَالْعِظَامِ كَمَا نَهَا أَنُ نَبِيُّ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ وَكَذَلِكَ كُلُّ مَا لَهُ حُرْمَةٌ. That we cannot use dung to clean ourselves, nor can we use anything which is considered to be sacred, like they say, a page of a book of knowledge, or anything which is considered to be sacred, like bones, and so on and so forth. Naam. طيب. Something which is متعلقة بهذه المسألة, يعني كل ما له حرمة, everything which is considered to be sacred, is that we also do not enter the bathroom. Naam. With anything which is considered to be sacred. فهمت? Like, for example, a ring which has inscribed on it, for example, Muhammadur Rasulullah. And Anas ibn Malik narrated the hadith that when the Prophet ﷺ used to enter the khala, wada'a khatima, that he used to remove his ring and put it somewhere. Why? Because on it was written Muhammadur Rasulullah. However, the scholars mention that the hadith which is mahfuz is the hadith wherein the Prophet had a ring and then he dispelled of it. So he never had a ring. Alayhi salatu wassalam. So anything which has hurma on it, it is not permissible for us to enter the bathroom with it. So what about our phones? Huh? Back in the days, the people should like to take the Cape August to the bathroom. Huh? The bathroom is not a place where we spend a lot of time in. It is a place to do qada'ul haja. It is a place where you go to relieve yourself. So you go there for that purpose, you relieve yourself and you exit. Na'am. So anything which is sacred is not permitted. We can't remember Allah Azza wa Jal in the bathroom. Na'am. The Prophet also never remembered Allah Azza wa Jal when he relieved himself. And as soon as he left, he said, Ghufranaka. Also in the hadith, what if somebody gives salam to you whilst you're in the bathroom? Cough. Is the hadith he mentioned that a man passed by the Prophet also when he was relieving himself, and the Prophet also ma radda salamahu. The Prophet never returned his greeting. And what's the ruling on returning the greeting? Is wajib. Na'am. So the fact that the Prophet left it off shows us it's not permissible. Because initiating salam is sunnah and responding is wajib. إذا حييتم بتحية فحيوا بأحسن منها أو ردوها. That if you are greeted with a greeting, then reciprocate in a better manner, or simply respond equally. So if someone tells you Assalamu alaikum, salam, suffice? La. Assalamu alaikum, you must say wa alaikum assalam. Bi ahsana minha, better than it. Wa rahmatullah. Right? Aw rudduha, reciprocate. Assalamu alaikum wa alaikum salam. Somebody give you the entire greeting, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You say wa alaikum salam. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Basic etiquette which is being lost in our communities, right? And the sign of Qiyamah is that the Muslims will only greet those whom they know. So we must revive the sunnah of spreading salam. The Prophet said, Afshu salam. وأطعموا الطعام وصلوا بالليل والناس نيام تدخلوا الجنة بالسلام. The Prophet said, spread salam and feed the poor, and pray at night when the people are sleeping, into Jannah with salam. So you must revive the sunnah of greeting. But the point here is what is the ruling on returning the greeting when someone greets you whilst you're in the bathroom? We said it is not permissible, because the person passed by the Prophet also when he was relieving himself, and he never reciprocated the salam. So this shows us that it is la yajuz. It is not permitted. However, some scholars have mentioned that the reason why it is not permitted is because it's a place of najis. But he says today, with the cisterns and the flushing systems we have, it rids our bathrooms of najis. So he says, there's a difference between remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, talaffudan, in wording, like saying Alhamdulillah in the bathroom, or Bismillah, and there's a difference between, remembering Allah Azza wa Jal within yourself. Bima'na, remembering Allah Azza wa Jal by way of your heart. So he gives an example, and he says, for example, if you don't have a separate area where your toilet is and your bathroom, you perform wudu in your bathroom, can you say Bismillah? He says, within yourself. But not saying it out loud. You with me? And Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. So this is the segment on Babul Istinja wa Adabi Qada al-Haja, the chapter concerning the etiquettes of relieving oneself. And the next chapter we'll move on to, inshallah, is Faslun Izalatul Najasati wa Ashiya'i Najisa, the chapter concerning the removal of najasa and things which is considered to be najis. Because najis we translate as impurities, but najasa is only certain things which the shari', which the legislator, considered to be najis. We give the example. A person, we ask the youngsters this question. Person's playing touch rugby, soccer outside. Now it's time for Asr. And the person has to do, but he's sweating. Can he pray like that? Yes. Not najis. Maybe it's khilaful awla, that he should not be in that state. But can he pray like that? Not considered to be najis. A person carry stain on his thawb. Right? So how can you pray like that? Can the person pray with a carry stain on his thawb? Huh? No, it's not considered to be najis. Person has mud on his thawb. He prays in that thawb. Can he pray in it? Huh? Naam, he can pray in it. It's not considered to be najis. So najis is only certain things in the Sharia which is considered to be najis, and we'll discuss that section next week, inshallah. نكتفي بهذا سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.